So we're delighted to have you join this discussion on the water energy nexus. And I'd like to welcome Jason Chow, Director at Ecolab, Southeast Asia. So just a bit of background before we delve into some questions. The World Resources Institute says that though the private sector is trying to use water more efficiently, scarcity will be exacerbated by climate change, population growth, and the greater water use that comes with growing prosperity. Going to sit down with Jason and have a chat through some of these issues. But Jason, first of all, perhaps you'd just tell us a little bit about Ecolab. I was looking again at your site last night. It's a very interesting company. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Thank you for the question. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we are just in the afternoon session, right? Pleasure for me to be here. Just a bit about Ecolab, right? We a trusted company for millions of customers. Then Ecolab is a global sustainability company offering water, hygiene, and infection prevention solution that protects people and resources vital to life. We are in our 101 years right now, so building on a century of innovations. We have businesses about $15 billion across, employs more than 48,000 employees and operates in more than 170 countries. Now, we deliver comprehensive science-based solution, data-driven insights, and world-class service to advance food safety, maintain clean and safe environments, and also optimize water and energy usage. Our innovative solutions drives operational efficiencies and sustainability in the food, healthcare, life sciences, hospitality, and industrial markets. So that's a bit about Ecolab.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, we're sitting here in tropical regions such as Asia, which are prone to damaging floods as temperatures rise, yet as other regions suffer droughts. What are the implications of certain climate change impacts on planning today for that resilient tomorrow? We've heard a little bit about resilient cities today already. And what is the extent of water scarcity and planning gaps? Which regions and sectors are most at risk?
Right. Thanks again for the question, right? I think the effects of climate change know no border, right? There are many areas that we have listened to for the past couple of days as well that it impact. Just to name a few, right? Infrastructure design and building codes, urban planning, right? Energy strategy, water resources management, disaster preparedness and responsive legislation and policy as well, and community engagement and education too, right? So, and there are more areas as well it will be impacting. So each of these areas represent a profound shift on how society traditionally operates, where it requires significant investment now, right? New technologies as well, innovative solutions, and education. Now, to be successful, I think planning for a resilient tomorrow demands international cooperation, right? It's not just about localization. So climate change, we know that is bring extreme weather events, right? And infrastructure needs to be geared up to face those challenges. So this means that revising building codes, standards, education as well, to account for more powerful storm, flooding, and heat waves that we are experiencing. Okay, so as we move towards lower carbon future as well, so energy strategies will involve expanding renewable sources, increasing energy efficiencies, and planning for energy resilience in the face of power disruption, right? So that's a bit about the macro thought about it. When we look into water scarcity, it's a growing global issue with complex and far-reaching implications. Physical water scarcity happens, right, when there is not enough water to meet demands, right, including environmental flows. So we are seeing gaps over here now. According to integrated water resource management, many regions lack comprehensive strategies that consider the entire water cycle, and from source to sea. Um, this is where IWRM aims to balance social, economy, and environmental needs. But it's often seen not fully implemented. And that's a lacking over here. Now, to our perspective is that climate act commitments require water goals. Okay.
When we're talking about water scarcity, for business, that's where climate change really hits home.
Yep.
I actually was working in Cape Town when we were nearing day zero of running out of water. And that's when, you'd be in, anywhere in a public space. You couldn't turn the taps on, couldn't wash your hands. You were going to the side of the mountain to fill up your water bottles. It's a frightening reality and glimpse into what we actually might face in the future if we don't bring in these efficiencies. But historically, companies like Toyota, Foxconn, which produces for Apple, for instance, have had to halt production in parts of China because of droughts caused by those hydropower shortages. What is then the relationship between water and energy stewardship and that water energy nexus?
Yeah, great question over here, right? When you look at water, it's being used part of the industrial and manufacturing as well. Whether you use it in facilities, refineries, data centers, and so on and so forth. So it involves a broader aspect of how industry use water. Now, the water energy sector's nexus, right, is actually rapidly growing appreciation that climate and water system, they are interlinked, right? And changes in one system induce non-linear changes in the other, right? Water supply and demand and energy production impact climate, right? Climate changes affect water availability, right? And the availability of water in returns affect energy production. So it's all interlinked over here that we are seeing, right? If you only focus on energy without focusing on water, I think that is not going to help up in terms of balancing it out, okay? So with that said, right, we cannot achieve decarbonization goals without focusing on water, right? And it requires defined plans for smart water management at an operational level. I think the previous speakers from Fujitsu has mentioned about there are technologies and advancement that we have seen in certain country or certain industry that really help to create that net positive water impact.
Yeah, I think when we speak to data center operators, even that question of cooling is quite a tricky one, especially when you're trying to cool with water rather than aircon energy. But the problem isn't necessarily a lack of water
Right.
either. Climate change may make some places drier, others wetter. We've seen some terrible flooding in the past year here in the region. And it's really that uneven distribution of fresh water, which in fast-growing places like India are woefully short, that provide those conditions for a crisis. How can that be managed and planned for? And will water shortage mitigation or adaptation be more impactful?
Right. Yeah, and then from business perspective, that you can look at facilities in different regions. They operate in a very unique watersheds. So when it comes to measuring goals and putting in strategy as well, it has to take into that local constraints and climate in consideration. Okay, so this will actually help in terms of local benchmarking against local and regional, right? And on water shortages that you mentioned, right? There is a need to balance both mitigation and adaptation, right? When we look at watershed, it's actually providing habitat to wildlife, space for neighborhood, and also vital sources, water sources for industry. And given the importance of watershed, right? So companies, businesses should aim to design their water efforts to go beyond meeting minimal compliance, but rather than net positive water impact based on that local needs. So in return, right, once this is achieved, not just that water is available for businesses, but also satisfying the local communities as well.
Mm. But what are some of the barriers and the enablers to firms that are trying to make these positive changes in a really an authentic way?
I think it's a great question here when we talk about barriers, right? I think we should pivot against to understand about rather than talking about barriers, it's more towards that legislation and regulation collaboration,
Mm.
right? Enablers is actually more towards like how can companies set the goals, okay, and stewardships so that they can move on further. So that's our perspective from there.
Mm. Mm. I mean, we've heard about, building that business case for, putting some of these measures in place. What is the return on doing good and doing well in an organization?
Right.
And how can ESG metrics be converted into financial returns,
Hmm.
which seems to be the only language apart from the planet burning? How do leading organizations move from a sort of performative stance on this to substantive sustainability action?
Right. Well, when we talk about doing good and doing well, I think it's simply the right thing to do,
Yeah.
right? I think you emphasize on the 3P as well.
Mm.
Okay, whether it's advancing in terms of people, planet, and to us it's business,
Mm.
right? Um, Business should activate sustainability strategy to advance their approach towards people and planet too. Now, when you talk about performance to substantive strategy, I think as a start, we use a four-step framework focusing on goals, actions, insights, and outcomes.
Mm.
So that's the four things that we need to businesses need to work on, right? And this is where I challenge all of us to take measurable and timely action through operation, funding, and partnership that can really direct benefits global water system. Now, just to give you some perspective, right? When you talk about insights, we have conducted more than 500 assessments in various industries. And this is where when we understand that by putting in the rightful measures and a strategy in place, it can really help to enable the reduction of water usage by up to 44%, greenhouse gas emission by up to 22%, energy usage by up to 22%, and greenhouse gas emission by up to 12%.
Mm.
So there are ways and there are intention that needs to be in place.
I mean, intention needs to be put in place, but
Right.
we talked about carrot and stick in the
Yeah.
last panel. I mean, how much of this needs to be mandated to get people to actually? We take it for granted that you can turn the taps on and the water comes out, and it's always there. But do we need more sort of strong arming to get people to take this a little more this issue seriously?
Yeah. I guess in terms of when we shift towards that understanding, right? When businesses take that risk mitigation into
Yeah.
consideration, I think it's more than just a carrot and stick
Mm.
by then. Of course, we can continue to focus on legislation and policies to help to drive this. But overall, when we put all in all together, I guess we have a combining force that can move towards that direction.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jason. Thank you so much for your insights today, for speaking to us. That was great.